The death of Otto Warmbier broke just before we went to air yesterday. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Maybe because I have a son about the same age when poor Otto wandered innocently into North Korea on a travel junket, something my son might do, or maybe because I have a long memory. I remember that obviously staged North Korean press conference where Otto admitted to taking a poster from a hotel for which he was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. Again, a poster from a hotel. Now look at the video. Otto breaking down in fear of the fate he awaited. It doesn't take a UVA degree to see that this was a coerced confession. That young man right there was scared to death, possibly, probably, literally. But I also remember the shameless way the liberal left media treated poor Otto. Despicable hacks at Salon ran this headline. Check it out. This might be America's biggest idiot frat boy. That has since been deleted, but it got worse. Huffington Post made the incident about race and blamed Otto. They said, quote, North Korea proves your white male privilege is not universal. So according to the Huffington Post, Otto Warmbier was abducted by North Korean war criminals because he was white, and the whole matter is his own fault. Huffington Post, you owe the Warmbiers an apology. But leave it to failing liberal websites to insert race and white privilege into literally everything. Can we just please stop? Apparently we can't. Check out this tweet by a website that claims to represent millennials. It says, quote, watch whiteness work. He wasn't a kid or innocent. You can't go to another country and try to steal from them. Respect their laws. That was Affinity magazine, and they tweeted this after the news broke of Otto's demise, blaming poor Otto for the cruel and unusual punishment. By the way, that is loathsome, Affinity. It's subhuman. But reasonable people on both sides of the political spectrum should see that as horrendous. Nobody deserves the fate of Otto Warmbier. Nobody. And those who think it's cute, funny, or an opportunity to highlight social justice issues, maybe you should spend a few months in a North Korean prison. Let us know how American life and liberty look to you then. Any takers at Affinity, by the way? I doubt it. After severe backlash, Affinity took down that asinine tweet. I'll bring Curtis Slewen in right away. What is going on with the left that they will insert white privilege into all their debates, all their dialogues?
Well, because they're so used to their mantra. And yet I'm looking at this and I'm saying, hey, Mr. President, how about putting on a travel ban to any American who's crazy enough to go behind the kimchi curtain of North Korea and deal with the evil seed of Kim Jong mentally ill? That's where we need a travel ban. When Otto decided to go with everyone else, you're taking a risk. These are countries where totalitarian dictators kill their own people. Why wouldn't they kill a tourist or a visitor? And we're not prepared to go to war. I hope, Eric, you're not suggesting this is like weapons of mass destruction. This is like Gaddafi in Libya. This is like Bashir Assad. We do not need to start a fight over Otto.
Douglas, I got lit up a little bit yesterday for suggesting that maybe there could be or would be or should be a preemptive, let's not call it a nuclear strike, but certainly a strike to limit North Korea's capability of delivering a warhead to the United States.
Well, that's certainly the red line that has to be held by this country. Look, I mean, North Korea is against some fairly stiff competition, the worst country in the world. I've been as a reporter to many terrible places. I've been to North Korea. It's literally a hell on earth. And there is nothing you could do to cut it off more. It's totally isolated. It has no sense of what the outside world believes or knows about it. The people have been brainwashed. When the regime does fall, it will be, you will need millions of psychiatrists to deal with the people in that country alone. But the absolute red line for this country is you cannot allow it to get deliverable missiles.
Yeah, the problem is, when do we know? I mean, there literally could be an ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, on a launch site, and we don't know what they have jacked in the tip of that warhead.
Right, and the problem is there really is no good way to deal with North Korea, because we don't, of course, we don't want them to allow them to get to that point. But if we do something, Eric, obviously they're going to retaliate. We can't wipe out everything, especially since the way the terrain is. There's a lot of ways to hide things. And like you said, all those people there'd be a huge vacuum. It'd be like what happened in Libya. It'd be that on steroids in terms of this vacuum of power. Even if we did take him out, people being able to come in and have the same kind of terrorist-type organizations there. So it's a huge, huge mess.
You want to address your radio co-host over there saying that maybe the only way to do this is to do a travel Curtis, a travel ban?
Oh,
that's how we're going to deal with Kim
That's
Jong-un?
point one. Before I step on you, Ebony K. Williams.
Go ahead.
It's Red China we need to go after.
Okay,
the
we didn't say
mentor
that.
state.
You
They're
didn't say that.
Medicis. They're supporters.
You blamed American travelers.
North Korea can't survive a day without the red Chinese yen. And yet there's the president playing footsie with president who's on first, I don't know who's on second, who's on third, down in Mar-a-Lago having chocolate cake. Come on. It's the red Chinese that we need to put pressure
your
on.
sandwich in front of
All right.
a couple of these
in his defense, he did mention China this morning on our show. Listen, Eric, I actually want to address something that I thought was very important and powerful in your monologue. And that is the fact that the way certain, I won't even call them publications, rags, internet rags, responded to the death of this young man shows a real lack of empathy in our country, in our world. It's the same lack of empathy I've seen in the wake of the tragic death of Philando Castile, for whatever you think happened, because people are so attached to their political ideologies, right? And they run in their respective corners, and they get so caught up and in their feelings around it that when innocent people die, there is no room in their hearts and in their emotional capacity for empathy. And I think that's very, very important, because no matter, you know, I wouldn't advise anyone to go to North Korea, obviously, but this young man is dead, and it's unnecessary, and it's the result of a brutal regime.
There are at least three more Americans being held under the same circumstances so far, and a Canadian as well. So, Curtis, before we wait and see who doesn't show up in North Korea anymore, what are the answers? How do we get these people back? Should we talk a foreign policy expert? How do you get our other three Americans back?
It's extremely hard because the nature of the regime now with Kim Jong-un is even more unpredictable than it was with his father or his grandfather. I think that, first of all, as you said, regime change is kind of off the table. The only thing you can do, as you said, is to go via the Chinese. The Chinese are the only people. They regard the North Koreans as being like a very embarrassing young relative. And they know that they sort of own it and are responsible for it, and they hate it, and yet they need it. And it's only with the Chinese, as you say, that you can do anything.
How do you get the Chinese to understand that any sort of conflict on the Korean Peninsula would be a floodgate of refugees into mainland China?
Well, the Chinese know that, and they also, but you know, the other thing is they don't want South Korean-style capitalism on their border either. So the only way you can do it is to persuade the Chinese that the price for them not bringing Pyongyang into line is worse than the price of bringing them into line. But, I mean, you're dealing with literally the most insane leadership on the planet.
How do we demonstrate that, though, what you just said? Because that's been my question I ask 15 different ways every time this topic comes up. How do we incentivize China to get on board?
We already do it. We attack Iran on a regular basis. But we give the red Chinese a pass. They export fentanyl into our country. It is now the #1 reason that people are dying of opioids in this country, because of red China. We give them a pass on everything. This president has to knock off this business deal mentality with red China and play hardball.
So, Curtis, are you suggesting we attack, like, military action against China? Leave North Korea alone?
The same way we're putting pressure on the North Koreans with aircraft carriers and battleships and cruisers. Start aiming it towards the red Chinese coast. Start putting all means of pressure.
Let me get this straight. You would rather aim our cannons and our firepower at 1.3 or 1.4 billion people than maybe 40 or 50 million people in North Korea?
Who pulls the strings on the North Koreans? It's the red Chinese.
Absolutely.
We are distracted and deflected by that fat guy with the bad haircut, the nut job, who obviously wants to be a cast character of mayhem. He loves doing this and becoming the center of attention.
We're not distracted, Curtis. What it is our financial interests are a direct conflict with our... That's what
there actually are
consequences. It's all about the moolah shmoolah, the money.
There actually are consequences to just sort of threatening and aiming cannons at people all around the world. They're really just...
Oh, but we do it in Syria. We do it in North Korea.
So maybe bring Douglas in here. I mentioned yesterday, I believe 1980 and 1981, Israel was threatened by the Iranians and their nuclear program, and they covertly went in and said, look, we want your help in the United States. We weren't offering it, and they did it on their own. They blasted their nuclear capability 20 years into the future.
The Oz-Iraq strike, the Israelis carried out the most successful preemptive strike in military history that I can think of. It stopped a country getting nuclear weaponry. And look, the thing with North Korea, you've got to decide what it is you want. If you want to get the people home, then that's one decision. If you want to stop them ever being a nuclear power, that's another decision. If you want to do regime change, that's another. But to my mind, you have to decide which of these is most important.
Let me ask you this, Kat. Do the North Koreans have the right, let's call it this, do they have the right to develop their nuclear program knowing what we know about their leader?
Obviously not. I don't think anybody would say that that's a good idea. Obviously not.
I didn't say good idea, bad idea. Do they have the right to do it?
No, because it's a murderous regime. We don't want that. Nobody wants that.
So
These
if
are
they
not
don't
good
have the
people.
right to do it, isn't it our turn or our time or to have a coalition go in?
And do what, though?
65 years we've tried to deal with this North Korean regime, and 5 presidents haven't been able to. Maybe it is time to do it. Take the page from the Israelis.
And they're the only country in the world that actually runs concentration camps at the moment.
Exactly.
The only country.
But yet we still continue to have on this notion of doing a deal with a regime that is, I just don't think you can do a deal with everybody, Eric. And I know that sounds hawkish or whatever, but I mean, my goodness, it's not going to be worth the paper that it is written on because they are not operating in good faith. And that's the truth.
We do, Curtis, we do have covert operations, do we not?
Oh, there's no doubt.
It will have to be something like that.
You know, and no one's going to say this on television, but, you know, maybe this is the time and the place for a very covert operation.
Or the alternative, take the mothballs out of the Love Shack in Chappaqua, the whitest suburb in America, where Bill and Hillary share a house, and send Bill over there with Al Gore. They've gone there before. They brought back our hostages there before. You see, you play to a nut job like the evil seed of Kim Jong mentally ill, and you make them feel important.
Bringing back
send Clinton, send
Curtis, bringing back these 3 hostages isn't going to solve the problem of Kim Jong-un, who consistently tells us he's going to be able to reach the western coast of the United States with a bomb.
You know, if you were in Seoul, Korea right now, it'd be great if we all of a sudden launch missiles into North Korea. But the first people who get hit are in Seoul, and he's going to turn them
Let me
into
get Doug in here for one thing. By no means do I'm not trying to insinuate that we blow the North Koreans to smithereens. I'm saying we take the teeth or set their nuclear program back 10 or 20 years by whatever means necessary.
Yeah, that's the most obvious. You've got to do that at some point. And there's one other thing to bear in mind. They may be a crazy regime, the most crazy, but at some level Kim Jong-un wants to survive, and he knows, like everyone else in the North Korean leadership, that they're riding a tiger, and the moment that they get off, they get eaten.
Final thought?
I think he said it best.
We're going to leave it right there then. You good?
Yeah.
Good to go. All right, when we come